Total Screen proudly presents their official podcast, On Screen, with your hosts, Tyson Gifford and William Rohrig. Hello, everybody. This is the On-Screen Podcast, Episode 8. I am your host. My name is Tyson, and joining me is...
William Rohrig.
So today, we don't have anything to talk about, like, big news stories as far as, like, a Comic-Con or something like that. And we don't have, like, an active show or movie that we're discussing in full spoilers. But we do have a few stories we're going to go over. So this is just kind of like a bit of a looser episode. Until next week, we have some more stuff coming up.
Ooh, loosey-goosey.
Let's start off with our first segment, which is On Beat. On Beat is the segment where we talk about news stories that are coming up. These are just kind of 3 TV news stories we have this week, not too big. The first one, South Park creators Matt Stone and Trey Parker are eager apparently to buy Casa Bonita.
And that's interesting because I heard that apparently it's a Colorado chain, which I had no idea. I used to live in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and they had a Casa Bonita there, next door to the comic store they used to go to. One of the comic stores in Tulsa they used to go to. And apparently their food sucks. My standards must be shit. Cause like I ate there, like I honestly like did not know that was like a franchise at the time. I just thought that was like a locally owned restaurant in Oklahoma. I liked their food enough. I liked the restaurant. I honestly thought it was like authentic Mexican food, especially considering how close the Southwest is supposed to be, like, you know, where all the good Mexican food is supposed to be. So I honestly thought, like, I guess I was eating good stuff, but apparently not.
Is it kind of like a quasi-theme restaurant? I've never been to one, but I know, like, they did a South Park episode about it, and they were talking about, like, cliff divers in the restaurant and all sorts of, like, weird stuff going on.
I don't remember. I don't remember, like actors, like, doing cliff diving. I don't know. Nothing like that.
It was just pretty much straight-up restaurant?
Yeah, it just looked like a normal restaurant. I mean, they had, like, obviously, like, they had decorations and stuff. And everything. I mean, it was like, I guess...
That could be either an invention
similar to like
Park.
A Mexican-themed TGI Fridays or something, I guess.
That could be like a South Park invention, or it could be that maybe one of the locations or something in Colorado.
I would imagine like the Colorado location probably has like different things in it.
Yeah.
I would be shocked if they were completely identical.
Yeah. I mean, that happens a lot. Like, there's a burger chain, in Los Angeles that I love called Slater's 50/50. And their big thing is that their burgers are 50% bacon and 50% beef. And they have like all sorts of just crazy, like stunt burger type stuff. And I was super excited when they were opening up one in Dallas, in Texas, because I have some family that lives in like Fort Worth area. And so we were really excited to take them to the one in Dallas when we were visiting them, and we did. And a lot of the stuff on the menu just wasn't there. It wasn't out this one. And we were kind of like bummed. We're like, wow, this is weird. Why don't they have all this stuff? And it's because it's a different franchise location. There are a lot of differences between the different places. So that's pretty common, I think, for when you have something that's very like state focused, but then they open one up somewhere else, that it's going to be pretty different than the main chain.
Right.
But yeah, so the interesting thing here is, like you said, there's a lot of people say the food isn't really great at Casa Bonita. Again, I've never been there, so I can't judge on it.
I'm not the patron saint of good taste, so I'll just say that right now.
They also, I know, apparently, like, they have like a big gift shop or something and it hasn't really been interesting or good, and people are upset about that. And I think the whole place is like closed down right now because of the pandemic, and it's having some issues, and it's kind of indefinitely closed. Like, they don't know when exactly they're going to reopen. So they started this whole thing where the South Park creators said that they were interested in buying I don't know if it's just one of the restaurants or if it's the whole chain or what's going on with it, but they want to buy it. And Casa Bonita, the restaurant, says that they're not really interested in selling, but they don't really seem to be doing that well. Like they're looking like they might be on the edge of closing anyways. But it's just interesting because this is like a restaurant that they had a whole episode of South Park that was about this place. And now they're interested in buying it, which would be interesting because they, obviously I'm sure there'd be a much bigger South Park tie-in with the place if they did own it, like I'm sure they'd have all sorts of South Park stuff in the gift store, maybe some other South Park related stuff going on around there.
Right.
But, it would almost be like possibly like a South Park theme restaurant of sorts. But yeah, that's our first news story. Our second news story, this is for a show that I watch, Will doesn't watch, but it's called AP Bio. And this was a show that was on NBC.
Because it's on a streaming service that I am not subscribed to, so.
Yeah. But it's on NBC, and then it got moved to Peacock. It got canceled after its second season, and then that was right around when Peacock was starting up. And so Peacock said, oh, well, we'll pay for a third season, and it'll just become a Peacock exclusive. So this came out like at the launch of Peacock. It was one of the first offerings on there, like the first exclusive offerings. It was like this and like the Psych movie, or the second Psych movie that were like exclusive to Peacock when this came out. And I remember I started up an account for it, and all I could watch was the first episode. And then after that, everything was locked down to paywall because Peacock has a free tier and then they have a pay tier. So you can only watch like the first episode of season 3, and then you have to like be on the paid tier, which isn't too much. I think it's like $5 a month for the ad supported one. But anyways, it's a really good show. It's just a lot of people don't have Peacock, so they probably won't be able to see this. But the interesting thing here is that the main character on the show, his father is going to be showing up in season 4, and he's been cast, and it's Bruce Campbell that's going to be playing his father. So
nice.
Bruce Campbell.
We love Bruce Campbell on the podcast.
I think if Bruce Campbell's cast in something, it's always going to make our news.
Yeah. Like I said, we love Bruce Campbell. It's always fun when he shows up. He's a great guy, from all accounts.
Yeah, I've met him a few times. He's really cool. And just a big fan of all of his kind of cult movies and stuff. So
yeah, definitely. So that's cool news. It's a cool bit of casting for that show. I don't know. Maybe I'll watch it someday. But right now,
could start up a free trial of Peacock when that season drops.
Yeah, I guess I got enough on my plate right now.
And our last news story of the week is the Lord of the Rings Amazon series. So we say Lord of the Rings, but it's not really Lord of the Rings. It's like the Middle Earth Amazon series because Amazon bought the rights, kind of the insulary rights to like Lord of the Rings material. So it's not even the Silmarillion. It's just kind of like the world Bible for Middle Earth is kind of what they bought the rights to. And so they're doing a series based on that. That's supposed to take place in like either the first or second age. I don't know.
I heard second age. I don't know. I'm not big enough Lord of the Rings nerd to like know what these things are. So
yeah, not me either. I only just hear the mixed things from people talking about it and stuff. But anyways, this series made a lot of headlines when it was announced because Amazon bought the rights for an absurd amount of money, especially considering it wasn't even like the real property rights. It's just like this kind of very limited rights that they bought.
Yeah, well, because they have they know it's the granddaddy of all fantasy series. Mm-hmm. And the thing is Amazon desperately wants their own Game of Thrones, even though now we're kind of in ironically now we're kind of in a post Game of Thrones period where
everybody hated the last season of Game of Thrones.
Yeah, everybody hated last season, and big sweeping fantasy series aren't in vogue anymore.
Yeah.
But Amazon is trucking along with this because they started doing this when Game of Thrones was still airing, started getting the rights and getting this into production, locking it down. So, they're going to do it. They're spending the most money on this that they spent on anything.
Well, they're spending more money on this than anybody's spending on any TV properties.
Yeah,
So
that's how like
they're
all
very
in.
eclipsing Game of Thrones budgets,
So
like right from the
it's
get-go.
kind of like if this doesn't like do like gangbuster numbers, I don't know what Amazon's gonna do.
Well, one advantage Amazon has is that they're a mostly worldwide brand. Like their video content isn't as worldly as say like Netflix is, but much more so than HBO. So rather than like airing it only in America, doing the majority of their business there, and then selling off at a discounted rate to other people that can distribute it in other regions, Amazon's going to be able to distribute it in many regions around the world by themselves. So that's one way that like it'll put into perspective how big the budget is, because they can sell it to so many territories themselves.
Right.
But yeah, Amazon's going big on huge budget fantasy series. Besides this, I mean, this comes out September 2022. Later this year, they have like the Wheel of Time series coming that's also got like a pretty big budget, also based on a huge book series. They're doing a Conan the Barbarian series that's got involved with the guy that directed the big battle episodes of Game of Thrones is attached to it, you know? So that's going to be a big budget one too. So they're doing all these like big budget fantasy bets that they're placing. But this is the big of the big. This is by far their biggest one, you know? This is the one that had the just absurd price for the rights. It's been in development for so long, we've known about it from when they first bought the rights, because it was such a big news story then. And it's just been taken forever to find out any piece of new information on that. Well, we did get some information now, which is that they have completed filming and that the series is coming out on September 2nd, 2022. So that's the news about it. They also released a screenshot. It's very pretty, very detailed, big, massive sets in the background that are, you know, could be CG elements, probably CG elements. But yeah, that's Lord of the Rings Amazon series finally dated September 2nd, 2022.
Oh, wow.
Our next segment is On the Horizon. On the horizon. This is a segment where we talk about what is coming up in the next couple of weeks. So not a lot that we have in this segment. We have two properties that we're talking about. Both of those properties we're going to be talking about in full spoilers next week. At least, well, one episode from one of them, and then the other one's a movie. So the whole thing for that. And that is, first off, it's Suicide Squad is opening this Friday in movie theaters and also on HBO Max. It's one of the Warner movies. So all the Warner movies this year are coming to HBO Max day and date. So yeah,
lucky us.
DCEU, not really that good.
No, I have not been a huge fan of DC's movie universe so far.
There's one key difference here, though.
The Zack Snyder stuff has not been good. I enjoyed the first Wonder Woman.
Yeah. I thought the first Wonder Woman was okay. Shazam was okay.
Yeah, Shazam I heard was okay. I haven't watched it yet.
And Wonder Woman was okay.
Wonder
not
Woman
great,
84 was freaking atrocious.
Yeah,
I don't know
really
what happened with that film, but
it's weird how badly that one sank, you know?
Yeah. And I don't know, but I do know that I like James Gunn.
That's the key differentiator here.
Yeah, I love Guardians of the Galaxy. I love Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. I love some of James Gunn's like other non-Marvel movies. He did the one I can't remember the name of it, but the one with like the alien parasites.
Is it the ones of the slugs?
Slither. It's called Slither. Yeah, that's it. That one's good. Slugs. That one was a good movie.
Yeah, he wrote, it's funny because we talked about like Zack Snyder, but he wrote the Dawn of the Dead remake that Zack Snyder directed.
Oh, okay. I did like the Dawn of the Dead remake. I don't like 100% like hate like Zack. I don't hate Zack Snyder like people on the internet do. Like I like Dawn of the Dead. He's just not a good choice for like Superman or the Justice League. It's like just a mismatch of like
I liked 300. I don't know if it still holds up or not, but I really like 300.
They wanted like James Gunn said when Warner Bros. Approached them, they wanted to give him a Superman movie. And it's like, why would you give James Gunn Superman? Like that doesn't.
But he did do a Superman movie. Well, he didn't direct it, but he produced it.
No, Brightburn don't count. Jesus.
But it's like, Superman What If.
yeah. It's freaking Superboy Prime origin story. That Superboy Prime like ends up like punching reality and like changing the multiverse. And I think we have like enough evil like Supermans, like now. Because yeah, we have Brightburn, but Brightburn like he joins Homelander and Omni-Man, right?
Yeah.
In that category now. But like Suicide Squad is more to James Gunn's sensibilities. Because it's the property where like he gets to go loose with all these quirky personalities, these really quirky personalities, and he gets to go crazy with it because like it's a Suicide Squad, so like these people are expendable.
Mm-hmm.
So he really like it's in the title, it's in like the premise of the whole thing. So where like somebody like James Gunn can have a field day with that.
Yeah.
Premise.
Well, they straight up said people die in this.
Yeah.
Like it's not like a maybe not. Like there are characters that will definitely die.
Yeah, that will definitely die. And they should for a movie called Suicide Squad.
Yeah.
Like it'd be weird. The first one was not a great movie, in my opinion.
It's interesting because there's a lot of stuff coming out with that right now with the director of the first movie basically saying that he was completely screwed over, that they completely took his movie from him and re-edited it. It's unrecognizable. He said all the like pop music that was in it like wasn't in his cut at all. And like none of that was like the little like montage sequences set to the pop music. None of that is in his original cut.
And I believe him too, because like it's that's definitely like a Warner Bros. Thing.
That's David Ayer, right? Is the director.
Yeah, the first one, yeah.
So they're doing now, they're like kind of half jokingly doing a release the Ayer cut thing, which is like the Snyder cut. The difference here is that there actually is an Ayer cut, whereas the Snyder cut was more like an idea than the actual cut. Right. And they had to like invest another $30 million to make that 4-hour monster.
Yeah, to like shoot new scenes for that. Yeah, it's like,
this is like his cut's done, like Ayer, and he's saying
one of the big problems I had with the original Suicide Squad movie was like it's called the Suicide Squad, but they really like hard focused on just like Will Smith and Margot Robbie's characters, and like so it ended up being like instead of Suicide Squad, the movie ended up being Deadshot and Harley Quinn featuring the Suicide Squad. It's like, okay.
Yeah. As we said, the differentiator here is James Gunn. And the reason, like, just from like watching the trailers and stuff, the reason why I think this one's actually going to be good comes down to 2 words: lovable rogues.
Yes.
This movie is loaded with lovable rogues. And if anybody knows how to handle lovable rogues, it's James Gunn.
It's James Gunn.
When you watch the trailer, there's a huge thing, takes up the whole screen, the director of Guardians of the Galaxy. And so James Gunn's done all sorts of kind of cool movies and stuff, but they're really putting that focus out there on Guardians of the Galaxy because the comparable thing between them is that it's like a comic book based property about lovable rogues.
Well, it's also like the biggest thing, that the most mainstream thing he's done, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like if you put by the director of Super, like most of the audience is gonna know what the hell you're talking about.
Have you seen Super?
That
movie is brutal.
I want to see that though.
Oh god, that movie is brutal.
Right. Right. Yeah. I can imagine.
But yeah, I'm really excited for it. Great cast, great look. It's just over the top. It's ridiculous. It's going to have a tie-in to a HBO Max series that also looks good that I'm excited for. Also done by James Gunn. Maybe this will be the thing that turns around the DCEU. Probably not.
Because this is
going to be a standalone thing.
This is a standalone. This is like a one-off thing.
This is the diamond that didn't get digested that you find in the pile of shit.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
So that's Suicide Squad. That opens Friday, August 6th. By the time you hear this podcast, if you're listening to it, it's probably already out. So just hop on HBO Max and check it out, or check it out in your local theater. I'm probably going to watch on HBO Max and the theater if it's good.
Okay.
So I'm excited. And we're going to talk about that next week on our full spoiler segment.
Yes.
So I look forward to that.
That's going to be cool. That's going to be a fun discussion, I think.
Speaking of our full spoiler segment, we have another Disney Plus Marvel series coming. This one, the animated What If series. And yeah, I've been looking forward to this. Loki's been off the air for a while, and now I've been fiending.
I've been
more.
well, not just beyond that, like I love What If. Like I loved What If when it was a comic series in the 90s, because like the central premise of What If is like the premise behind the comic, I guess the comics, I'll explain, is you have like this character in a Marvel universe, Uatu the Watcher. And what the Watcher
Played
does,
by Jeffrey Wright in the show.
Yes. He was introduced in Fantastic Four in the 60s along with Galactus, because like the Watchers are like a race of like alien beings who like observe events that happen across reality, and not just like but across the multiverse. Their job is to observe all the events, everything, and their code is to never intervene.
Weren't they shown in the MCU in Stan Lee's cameo in Guardians 2?
Yeah, there was like cameo in Guardians 2 of Stan Lee and and one of the Watchers.
Yeah.
So there was a fun cameo. That's another thing I love about James Gunn. He put such fun, like he put like Howard the Duck at the end of the first Guardians movie.
Put David Hasselhoff in the second one.
Again, that's another thing, like James Gunn, he likes to have fun. He likes to do wild and crazy things. I love him.
He's one wild and crazy guy.
Yeah. But anyway for that, like, so like the idea of What If is the Watcher is like, he narrates every issue, and he's basically conveying to the reader events that he witnessed in various multiverses, and it's usually a spin-off or a take on a popular Marvel storyline that happened in the comics. One I remember vividly reading growing up was What If Kraven the Hunter Killed Spider-Man, which was a spin-off of the Kraven's Last Hunt storyline in the Spider-Man comics.
Mm-hmm.
Only in the What If version of the story, instead of just temporarily disabling Spider-Man and thinking he killed Spider-Man for Spider-Man just come back at the end and win, in the What If version, he actually succeeds in killing Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
And then it just leads to some craziness where after killing Spider-Man, Kraven decides that he's going to become the new Spider-Man. And he eats like a bunch of spiders, a shitload of spiders, and he puts on a Spider-Man outfit and just decides he's Spider-Man now. I don't know. It was a crazy comic book. I was like, okay. And that told me like, oh, this is cool. Like, the whole thing is cool because it allowed the writers of the various Marvel comic books to do stories that they wouldn't be allowed to do in continuity. Like you could do just anything like that you would not normally be allowed to do within continuity by the editorial. So it led to like all these fun scenarios and events. And I always thought, man, it'd be cool if we got like an MCU version of that. We finally are. Yes. Yeah.
So let's talk about some details on this. Let's run down the spec sheet of What If. So far it's got 2 seasons that are coming. Both of them are 9 episodes. I've heard, but I haven't heard like in a while, so I don't know if this is 100% true, that it's gonna basically, they're gonna have like 1 episode for every MCU movie.
Oh,
I don't know if they're gonna be counting the shows in this too, like if they're gonna do one that's like a What If related to WandaVision or a What If related, I don't know if they're gonna do that as well. But apparently they're going to be doing one for each movie, or at least that was the plan at some point. So like, they show in the trailers, one of the big ones they show is like Killmonger saving Tony Stark. So that would be like the Iron Man What If episode. Like
yes.
Iron Man 1 What If episode. The one that's supposed to be the first episode of this series.
What if Peggy Carter became Captain Carter instead of Steve Rogers becoming Captain America? Well,
yeah.
Basically,
so this
what
is the
Peggy
first
Carter,
Captain America movie.
Yeah, this is the first Captain America movie. I have no idea what the other one's supposed to be, because spoilers, from what I read, like, there's supposed to be an episode where Doctor Strange performs a spell and he turns like half the heroes of the Marvel Universe into zombies.
Yeah, they're doing a Marvel Zombies, which was a popular comic run.
Yes, it's a very popular comic run.
They're doing an episode of that. They're also doing an episode that is Guardians of the Galaxy, but T'Challa is picked up instead of Star-Lord.
Yes.
So it's like him playing the part that Star-Lord played. and there's going to be a bunch. And so, it sounds likely that they're going to be doing kind of one for each one, but they're not necessarily, because it looks like they're not doing them in the same order the movies came out in, but maybe they're doing them in chronological order, since like the first Captain America is in chronological order as the first of the MCU movies.
Yeah.
And
maybe.
so if the second episode is Captain Marvel, then we'll know that it's in chronological order now. Otherwise, it could just be in some other random order, you know?
Right.
Who knows? But I think there's 24 or 25 MCU movies right now, plus 3 series if you count all the Disney Plus ones so far. And they're 2 seasons, each 9 episodes, so that doesn't cover the whole thing. But, you know, by the time they, you know, air those 2 seasons, there probably will be enough to do.
Yeah.
3 9-episode seasons.
There's some, IGN had an article today about a rejected idea for a What If episode. They said head writer A.C. Bradley and director Brian Andrews spoke about their involvement with this idea. And Bradley said, I was kind of notorious for trying to get a Star Wars character involved. We did try at one point, but it's kind of like play with the sandbox you were given. We gave you the entire MCU, so run with that. She then went on to say, I was like, okay, but still, Luke Skywalker would be an amazing Avenger.
Very early on, either in our old podcast or maybe even in our old roundtable discussions before the podcast, you and Kat were both really into Once Upon a Time.
Yes.
And they had, I think, just bought Star Wars.
Yeah.
And they had already owned Disney. Disney had already owned Marvel and had just like bought Star Wars. And we were joking that it was going to be like Disney Infinity, the series, where
yes,
you'll be watching Once Upon a Time and you put like a Marvel character on the thing and he'll show up in Once Upon a Time.
I also like to joke that Once Upon a Time was just going to like at one point just turn into a Kingdom Hearts series.
Yeah.
It never did, but that would have been funny.
Yeah, but that was like the joke we were going on with there is like, you know, you'd see like a Star Destroyer in the background.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
An episode of Once Upon a Time or something. Kind of sounds like that's what they wanted to do here.
Yeah, it sounds like, yeah, exactly. It sounds like that's what they wanted to do here. I'm glad it was turned down personally. I think What If it's very Marvel centric, and having this, like, especially having this be MCU centric, I just think, man, it's dangerous to start, if you start bringing stuff outside of Marvel, like, where does it end? That's dangerous. What
if Mickey Mouse was Captain America?
Yeah, stupid stuff like, goddamn. It's like, no, just keep it to Marvel. Like, these are riffs on Marvel stories. It should not be like, what if Luke Skywalker joined like, no, come on. What if fucking Captain Falcon punched Captain America Falcon? It's like, yeah, okay, we could do that story. It's just like...
Another canceled one that we know about is there was one that was apparently too close to what Guardians of the Galaxy 3 was going to be written as. And so that was canceled as well. There was one of the episodes was going to be too close to something that was actually in development already for them. But yeah, that's Marvel's What If on Disney Plus, starting on Wednesday, August 11th. That's next Wednesday. And yeah, we're going to be discussing that next week. So we'll be discussing the first episode, or however many episodes they drop right at the very beginning, which is probably just going to be the first one, I imagine. So that brings an end to our On the Horizon discussion. So our next segment is On Tap.
What we've been watching. What we've been playing. What's on tap.
On Tap is a segment where we talk about stuff that's that we've been watching separately. So I got to go to 2 new movies. So we're going to talk a little bit about those. I saw Jungle Book, and just today I saw The Green Knight. So starting off with Jungle Cruise. Your perception of this, I imagine, as a listener or anybody who's even somewhat mildly interested in Jungle Cruise is like, is this going to be like the Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson version of Jumanji, where it's going to be kind of a funny adventure, or is this just going to be just a trash experience that is best left unseen? I'd say it kind of falls between those two. I say it's a perfectly serviceable, fun adventure movie with some fun characters in it and some cool, like, visual aesthetics of, like, an adventure in the Amazon River, you know? There's a few good things in there. It's not nearly as good as the new Jumanji movies have been. There's not as much, like, comic pairing in it, you know? I mean, those movies have, like, Jack Black, and that has quite a few, like, good comedic character or actors in it, you know?
Right.
This has a few kind of comic actors. There's a few people in it. I think one of the more interesting roles in it is Jesse Plemons from Friday Night Lights and Breaking Bad. He was Todd in Breaking Bad, like the sociopath guy.
Right.
Towards like the end of the series. He plays like the villain. He's like a German prince. And he's like this really bombastic, kind of like over the top, old Hollywood kind of villain. So it's pretty fun. Yeah, it's an okay movie. It's not great, but if you want to go and just have like a fun little time at a movie theater, you know, and you've already watched all the other good movies like Black Widow and stuff, and you just want to watch something else, like Jungle Cruise it's worth your time for that.
Okay. Yeah.
And
That's
the next movie is considerably better.
Yes.
And that is The Green Knight.
I should hope so.
The Green Knight is really good. The Green Knight is what an Arthurian movie should be. It's, you know, by Arthurian, I mean like it's a King Arthur related movie. It's about Sir Gawain, based on the famous story Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. It's a somewhat loyal version of that. But I mean, the thing about Arthurian legend is it's kind of like comic books or mythology in the sense that like there's a million different iterations of every story, you know? Just like how like in some comic books, like a character's father will be one person and then they'll like restart the franchise and it'll be somebody else. They'll like retcon it and do a completely different story, you know? And it's the same way in like mythology. In some mythology, things happen one way, and in some versions of mythology, they happen in a completely different way. In Arthurian legend, sometimes Morgana is King Arthur's sister. Sometimes Morgana doesn't exist. She's just not even in the story at all, you know? That's kind of the way Arthurian legend is. And as such, to adapt it properly, I think you kind of need to be like vague, and you need to be kind of like weird and a bit surreal and a bit loose. You can't focus too much in on plot because it's essentially based on mythology. And what is mythology? Mythology is just very loose, you know? So you can't be too direct. You can't focus too much on creating like a complete narrative. You have to focus more on kind of the experience. You have to focus on character motivations over like plot decisions, your plot choices, you know?
Yeah, right.
And that's what the Green Knight is. So if you go into the Green Knight expecting to learn a lot of Arthurian legend, you're probably not going to pick up much. It's very vague, like I said. It's more just about the journey, and it's very good in that sense. If that's what you're looking for, it's very good. I said it before I even saw it, that this reminded me of the 80s movie Excalibur, which I think up until this point was like by far the best Arthurian adaptation for the movies, you know? There's nothing else that's been even close. And as you said, I think you said it either on the podcast or before or after the podcast last week, that the modern Arthurian stuff is all trying to be like realistic.
Yeah.
Like, you know, King Arthur, he's a real guy, you know?
Yeah. Recently, like you said, like the Guy Ritchie King Arthur movie and stuff, it's just stupid. Like I'm in it for the fantasy. Like I don't really like care about like the idea of King Arthur like being a real person and real history. It's not interesting to me.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. So that movie, like, especially like something like King Arthur with Guy Ritchie, because like they're like, oh, it's real history. It's heavily stylized. All right. Like, you watch that movie and you have people are in no way like behaving like people that era would actually behave anyway.
Yeah.
You know, they're behaving like modern people in that age. So it's just completely stupid to begin with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is not like that at all. This is the polar opposite. This is a very dark movie, like literally dark, in the sense that like it's shot in like castles and stuff, and castles are big stone buildings. They don't have glass windows, you know, so they don't have modern lighting. lighting. So everything's lit by like torches or by like holes in the big castles that allow light to stream through. And so there's a lot of darkness. There's a lot that plays in the darkness. There's a lot of scenes where you might see a character's face and like you might see something else that you're not sure if you actually saw it or not. That kind of stuff is like, that's really important to The Green Knight. It's a big part of what this movie is that you would never see in something like Guy Ritchie's King Arthur. It's completely different from that. I can give a few examples of it that aren't really spoilers at all, okay?
Okay.
Morgan Le Fay is in the movie. She's never named. She's a prominent character. She's just there. She has dialogue. She has scenes and stuff. They never say who she is. But you have to either know it or it doesn't matter. You're just like, oh, this is a character and this is what this character's motivation is. And you can pick up on that by watching it. Or you can know enough about Arthurian legend to go, oh, that's Morgan Le Fay, but they never tell you, same thing with Merlin. Merlin he's not like a huge character in it, but you see him and it's obviously Merlin, but they never name him. I don't think he has a single line of dialogue. He like nods sometimes, like he gives like gestures, like King Arthur looks at him at one point and he like kind of shakes his head to say like no or something, as like he's giving him counsel, but they never name him. They never say, oh, this is Merlin. That's kind of how this movie is, like it doesn't do that. It doesn't really name off all of these people. It doesn't really give you a clear, if you're like a newcomer to Arthurian legend, you're not really going to learn anything through this. You kind of have to like know that stuff already. And I like that about this movie. That's what I've seen people complain about, where they've said like, oh, the movie, it's really dense and it doesn't really tell you like anything. It doesn't give you the information you need to understand it and stuff. And I'm like, who doesn't know King Arthur? Like, who doesn't know that story, Right. I am so happy they're not retreading that story for me. I don't need them to explain who Guinevere is. I don't need them to explain who King Arthur is. I already know that. And so I'm really glad that they did it in this way, where these characters are just there and you see them in it and they're interesting portrayals of these characters. It's an interesting portrayal of just the world in general. Yeah. I mean, I read something where the director of the movie was talking about kind of a lot of his inspirations, and a lot of it came from like, I think a lot of it must have come, he didn't cite it, but it must have come from like Excalibur, just the very idea of like a very arty version of like Arthurian legend in that sense. But he did cite like a lot of like 80s fantasy stuff. Like he cited Willow and I think Lady Hawk at one point he cited in the interview as like being inspirations for this.
Right.
But it's not like a really talky, heavy, plot driven thing. This is like, it's a character's journey. There's very little dialogue. It's mostly visual. And it's very experience driven. So if you're into that, you're going to absolutely adore this film. If you're not, you're probably going to go, what the hell's going on?
Right.
So that's what I'll say. Yeah. Go in, just watch it, enjoy it, take in the experience. If you feel like some stuff just doesn't make sense to you, go open up the Wikipedia article about Sir Gawain. Read the Wikipedia article about Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, and they'll go over the legend that this is based on, and you'll go, oh, okay, I understand this, and I understand that part now. Like, now I know who that character was and why they were there and stuff. But you don't really need to do that to kind of get the movie, I think. You just kind of need to take it as an experience. You need to accept that you're not going to understand every aspect of it. That it's just kind of, you're just as blind as Gawain is to stuff that's going on. Where Gawain's going through this journey and he doesn't quite know who everybody is and if he should trust people and what's going on and what people's motivations are. You're in the same boat as him. You don't have knowledge he doesn't, and I like that. So that's The Green Knight. That is out in theaters. It came out this last Friday. I highly recommend it if you match the audience that I described in my description of this. So are you going to catch this once it comes to like VOD?
Yeah, I'm definitely going to catch it as soon as I can.
That's it for the podcast. So thank you everybody for listening. This is a bit of a shorter podcast. Like I said, we don't have like any main topics of discussion. So it's just kind of like stuff that's been going on the past week for us in relation to like TV, film and all that stuff. So, but next week we're going to have a lot more discussion, I believe, because we're going to be doing our full spoiler segment where we're covering both the Suicide Squad and What If. So that's going to be a lot of content there. Plus we'll probably have some other stuff in other segments as well, like we've had in the past couple episodes. So You can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Tyson Gifford. You can follow Will. He is at Foxel Hero. As we say at the end of every podcast, send us feedback. We love feedback. We want feedback, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. Just send it. And if you want us to say something on the podcast, you want to bring up a topic based on something that we've either talked about or that we are going to talk about. If you watch the Suicide Squad and you want to raise your point for us to discuss, send us some feedback before next week's podcast and we'll talk about it in that segment. So thank you, everybody. And that's it. So I'm here to kill chaos.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the OnScreen podcast, the official podcast of The Total Screen. Visit our website at thetotaliscreen.com. This podcast can be found on any major podcast client, including Pocket Cast and Apple Podcast. The entire backlog of this podcast and other content can be found on our YouTube channel.